So Donald Trump made a big deal about how he was signing this, Defense Production Act that allows him to direct manufacturers to start making things like masks and respirators. Problem is, he hasn't directed anybody to do it. Congress, Nancy Pelosi, in fact, is asking him to. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. We want to run through some of the news here of the day for you, and then we'll pick up your phone calls right after the break. Starting with, there's a great summary in the Axios newsletter today, Mike Allen's newsletter. He says it's no longer that this could be bad for the economy. The layoffs are starting. He said we're heading toward a $2 trillion deficit, invoking wartime powers, although Trump, while he signed the act and bragged about it on television yesterday, has yet to use it. So he has not directed any factories to start making masks. He hasn't. There's a 3M factory in Minnesota that makes masks. He hasn't said, hey, start making more. It's just, and I'm going to get to ventilators in a minute. Shocking news on the ventilator front, but widespread economic destruction. This from the Oregonian today, our local newspaper owned by a New York company. Oregon jobless claims surge 3,200%. You heard that right. Not 3%, 3,200%. The state's unemployment, an Oregon business leader predicted the state's unemployment rate could rise as high as 20% next month or the month after, and that nearly 500,000 people in Oregon will be looking for work. I think the population of our state is between 3 and 4 million. On Tuesday alone, now keep in mind, the average number of claims that the Oregon unemployment system, and we're just one little state. And we are not an epicenter of a major. We had 10 new cases last night. I think we're up to something like 70 here in Oregon. I mean, we're not New York or Washington State. We're just a little state, and we're just having little outbreaks. We average 570 claims a day, and Tuesday, 18,500 people in Oregon filed for unemployment insurance. Tuesday. Yesterday was Wednesday, but we get the statistics a day later. So back to Axios, he's talking about hospitals and government agencies are trying to throw enough medical supplies together. Hospitals are postponing elective procedures, even organ transplants. New York University is now vacant dorms, could be turned into hospital rooms. The governor and the mayor are looking at this. Cities are looking at motels, vacant buildings, even RVs for quarantine sites. Trump, calling himself a wartime president, freed up military manufacturing tools. Well, yes, but no, he's not using them. It's just cosmetic. So then the economic crisis is going on. In phase one of the crisis, share prices sink. Of course, that's happening. Louise thinks the Dow is going to get to 15,000. I think it's going to get to 6,000, which is where it was in 2008. But who knows? I mean, we'll see. They've got this $1 trillion. First, there was the $840 million plan that the Democrats passed through the House, went to the Senate, and they said, okay, $840 million would do that. They're working on a second one, $1 trillion plan. This is the one that has $1,000 or $2,000 check for everyone. We don't know yet. About half the money is going to go to needy Americans. The other half of the $1 trillion goes to billionaires and big corporations. Probably a few hundred corporations and a few thousand billionaires. But the working class is facing a very, very real recession. Meanwhile, on Wall Street, bankers and traders are trying to sell everything that's not nailed down. J.P. Morgan issued their expectations. It was a research note yesterday titled "The Day the Earth Stood Still." And they're saying in the second quarter, now January, February, March are the first quarter, so the second quarter starts in about a week and a half. And they're saying the second quarter you're going to see a contraction of the U.S. GDP by 14%, 22% the Eurozone. I think those are very conservative numbers. The most dire warning came from Pershing Square Capital Management CEO Bill Ackman, who went on CNBC to beg President Trump. He said, until a vaccine is manufactured, distributed, and injected, we will go through a Depression-era period in this country. And I believe he's the CEO. I saw this on the CNBC, on a CNBC story this morning, but I don't have it right in front of me, who actually started crying on the air. One of the giant hedge fund or investment fund owners, billionaire guys, was on CNBC yesterday crying about this. It harkens back to 1929, 1930, when you had stories of bankers jumping out of buildings. We're learning now that in the United States, the statistics that we saw coming out of China don't seem to be holding up in the United States. We seem to have a very different patient profile. This is probably because China started aggressive testing of people back in December. And South Korea started aggressive testing of people in January. We have not yet begun aggressive testing of people. By aggressive, I mean like pretty much anybody who wants it, anybody who's sick, all of their contacts, everybody, right? This is how Singapore is not seeing new cases. China is not seeing new cases. They've got this under control. Japan and South Korea are seeing very, very small increases in new cases, 70, 80 new cases a day. That's it. Because they know who's sick and who's not, and they've got them locked down because they have distributed hundreds of thousands of tests throughout the country. But the patient profile in the United States, 38% of the patients who were so severely sick that they needed to be hospitalized were between 20 and 54 years old. And nearly half of the patients who were admitted to ICU units in the New York hospitals, this is from the New York Times by Pam Bollock, nearly half of the patients admitted to ICUs in New York are under 65. And then they tell this tragic story about Grace Fusco, 73, died in a Jersey hospital hours after her son died in Pennsylvania, 5 days after their eldest child, Rita Jackson, 55, died. 4 of the children remain hospitalized. Nearly 20 other relatives are quarantined. I mean, these are the kind of stories we're going to start seeing. We just need to get ready for it. And we need to figure out ways to get more tests out. And or Donald Trump needs to figure out a way to get more tests out. And, governors are scrambling, hospitals are running out of supplies. This is a crisis that is here in the United States. It is not a crisis right now in Singapore. In Singapore, people are back to work. Because in Singapore, they planned for it. They were ready for it. They had the SARS thing that ran through Singapore, and they built out the infrastructure for it. When that happened, Obama started building the infrastructure at the Department of Homeland Security and the National Security Council. Trump fired them all 2 years ago.